Welcome to the WordPress Photography Podcast, the podcast for photographers who want to learn how to get the most out of WordPress to grow their photography business. You don't need to be a geek to understand WordPress. Settle back and listen as we show you how. Now, here's your host, Scott Wyden-Kivowitz.
Welcome to episode 28. My name is Scott Wyden-Kivowitz, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rachel Conley from Photoscribe. Hey, Rachel.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing well. Last episode was a fun one, and I'm really excited to dive into today's episode because we have somebody that I've known for many years on the show, and somebody I've respected for many years, and happy to call my friend, and somebody that you and I have been working with for some cool stuff in Connecticut.
Yes.
Should be a lot of cool stuff to talk about. Plus, there's a lot of news today.
I know.
A lot of news. So today we have Seshu. He is a father, a husband, a photographer, and a blogger based in Avon, Connecticut. And after working at ESPN.com as a photo editor and assistant director of communications for a prep school in Connecticut, Seshu returned to his photographic roots to create striking but natural portraits of people from all walks of life. And as a blogger, Seshu's Tiffinbox is a labor of love. If you haven't heard of Tiffinbox, you'll learn more about it today. It is a fantastic resource for photographers on the internet. So Seshu seeks to inspire photographers to fearlessly cross the bridge between craft and commerce to ultimately create a sustainable and creative photography business. So welcome to the show, Seshu. We're very happy to have you.
Well, Thank you so much for the great introduction. I appreciate it, man. It's great to be here.
Totally.
Yeah, we're very glad to have you. Tiffinbox is definitely a resource that I've gone to many, many times. So I'm excited to share it with our listeners and then talk about things WordPress and others.
Yeah, totally. So before we dig into photography-related news, I just wanted to share, so a little backstory on my relationship with Seshu. So I've known him for, I don't even know how many years at this point. We met on probably Twitter many years ago, if I'm not
I think you were stalking
correct.
Me, yes.
I might have been stalking on Twitter,
story,
I don't know.
Yes.
And
or I was stalking you, I don't know.
Yeah. So Seshu was on my list of photographers that I would want to photograph my wedding. And if you haven't seen any of Seshu's wedding photographs, you need to check them out. I would say, do you still mostly, the weddings that you still do you still mostly do Indian weddings? Or are they a mixture now?
I consider them multicultural weddings.
Okay.
Invariably, either the husband or the wife or the bridegroom or whoever is, they're from different walks of life. I mean, they're not from the same culture. They're usually from different cultures, and that usually excites me more than anything else.
Yeah. So the photographs are always so vibrant, so much fun, and it attracted me to his work instantly. And so I decided that when I was eventually getting married, I would want Seshu to photograph it. And my wife and I got married in Mexico. We could not afford to bring a photographer with us. So instead of hiring Seshu to photograph the wedding, Seshu did our engagement photos. So we went up to Connecticut and spent a weekend there, and he photographed us. And so I was very happy to be able to have somebody that I enjoy their work, to actually hire that person. So
there you go.
I never knew that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Seshu and I met at Inspire, which is a conference here in the Northeast for photographers many years ago when it first started. So we've sort of grown. I've grown Photoscribe and you've grown Tiffinbox along the same trajectory for sure. So it's been interesting to watch businesses grow and people grow.
And I think it's important to state that I've learned from both of you over the years. I mean, that's the beauty about all of this is that, yes, you may have liked my photography, Scott, but every time I look at a resource for WordPress, I'm looking at you. You're my speed dial. I told you that before. Rachel, blogging is such an important part of my life. I look at you and everything that you've done with Photoscribe, amazing, truly amazing. And you haven't done this just for yourself, obviously. You're helping photographers really advance their business in a way that they would have never thought of. I mean, think of it. I mean, when I came into the photography business, honestly, I remember, I won't mention the names of the photographers, but they were telling me they were spending something like, I don't know, $5,000-$6,000 for ad space in magazines. Again, I won't mention the magazines either, but it boggled my mind. I was like, why are they doing this? There's no way to track any of that stuff. You know, there's no way of knowing how many people are looking at that ad and then calling you and saying, hey, you know, I saw you on this magazine and that's why I'm calling you. Blogging can do that, you know, and that's why I have a huge amount of respect for both of you for doing what you do. It's a really, it's like a 1-2 punch on both sides, right?
Yeah.
You teach about the WordPress, you teach about blogging. It's a great fit.
And think about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, those magazines were so much more relevant than they are now just because of how we consume media. I mean, to be a photographer, you have to learn the craft, and then you have to keep up with all this other stuff, which is so hard because it's constantly changing. So we should go right into the WordPress news on that note, because we have some big changes.
There's a lot of stuff. Okay, so usually we have about like 2 or 3 things of news. Today we've got, I think, 6 or so. So the first one is there's a beta plugin currently in testing, and I've been playing with this. It's in consideration for WordPress version 5.0. This plugin enables front-end editing, tongue twister, similar to Medium.com. So if you've ever used Medium.com, which is a Twitter company, you can basically go to a page or a post that you've made and click edit, and then edit it right in the front without going to a back-end interface.
Wow.
So this plugin, which we will link to in the show notes, requires certain things like the REST API. Sorry, that's very advanced, but it's another plugin that's not yet fully included in WordPress core, but they're slowly bringing it into WordPress core. So it requires that, and it requires a beta of WordPress, not the current WordPress, in order for that to be used. So, but there's a possibility of it being included in WordPress 5.0, which would be brilliant because it would be beautiful, very quick and easy to edit any post or page content from anywhere on the front end.
But so what level of knowledge of WordPress do you think you have to use for it? It doesn't seem like a beginner thing to me.
So here's the cool part. You know, you're on the front end of WordPress normally where you're logged in. You've got the admin bar at the top.
Right.
Right now, if you hit edit, while you're on a post, if you hit edit, it goes to the back end to the edit post, right? With this plugin installed, when you hit edit, you can just edit right in line. It doesn't go anywhere. It just...
No, I understand the theory of it, but like installing it, making it work...
Right now, I would not recommend for any novice to try it.
Okay.
Because it's, first of all, it's still beta, so I wouldn't use it on a live site.
Right.
And 2, it requires 2 other things. It requires that plugin, plus the REST API plugin, plus a WordPress beta.
Okay.
So I would not recommend any novice to try it. I will just say it's beautiful. It's still kind of buggy. It still needs a lot of work, but it's beautiful. And if they do adopt it in WordPress 5.0, I will be so happy.
Wow. So definitely
I have a question for you guys. Is this adoption, is that going to be something that comes only because all of us start pushing WordPress to say, hey, you got to put this in there because it's going to make our lives easier?
Yes and no. Basically, the way the WordPress core development works is people who see a need for something in WordPress can develop what they call I think they call it like a core plugin, which basically is a plugin intended to go on WordPress core. And then the people who are in charge of that next version of WordPress, which that gets rotated every version,
right?
They actually vote on which will be included.
Yeah.
And so they have meetings to discuss it, and then it goes out to be beta tested, which like this one is right now. And literally anybody can install it, but so it's just a matter of I guess the influencers for that version of WordPress to want to make it happen. Yeah,
they have a really good team structure for each. So you would think WordPress 5.0 would be a huge jump.
Yeah, it should be.
But they really try each, so like 4.7 has significant increases, 4.8 will have significant increases. So they don't only do it on the .0s.
Right.
They're really good about rotating it through, and they try to do 2 to 3 updates a year, which is a really rigorous schedule to be on, especially on open source, which means anybody can contribute.
Yeah, and 5.0 should be a pretty significant release, because typically the big, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, the big .0s releases usually have some sort of significant change, and by the looks of it, 5.0 might be a user interface thing, because, again, one of the biggest complaints with WordPress is it's not as pretty as Squarespace.
Right.
So,
right, for sure.
So my guess based on the betas and what's happening right now in WordPress, my guess is 5.0 will be a big user interface improvement.
Well, we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, exactly. And to the point that one of the webinar attendees mentioned just a couple of days ago, Scott and I were on a webinar, and one of the attendees said, hey, for a photographer who has no knowledge of coding, how crazy is WordPress? And I think both Scott and I said, it's not that crazy. You just have to get used to the user interface.
Yeah.
Right.
And this sounds like it might just make it even easier for people like her. So that's great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which
So
I think WordPress is aware of, and that's what they're trying to do. That's where they're trying to go.
Yeah. Okay. The next bit of news, WordCamp US, the big WordCamp. There's WordCamps pretty much every week all around the world, but once a year is the WordCamp US. It used to be called WordCamp San Francisco. Last year, it was in Philadelphia because last year was the first year they switched it from WordCamp San Francisco to WordCamp US.
Right.
This is the one where Matt Mullenweg does his big official State of the Word keynote. And so what they decide to do is WordCamp US will be in the same location for 2 years and then rotate. So this year will be the second year in Philadelphia. I will be there. I know a coworker of mine will be there. I hope others will be there. It's going to be a really fun WordCamp. Next year it will be in a new location though. But before I get that, if you haven't purchased a ticket for WordCamp Philly, you still can. And they're also selling live streaming tickets. So if you can't actually make it to Philly, you can stream the sessions if you really want to.
Yeah, which I recommend. I did that last year and I got the t-shirt. So I felt like I wasn't there, but I was as close to being there as you could get.
Yeah. Now, this episode of the podcast is actually going to be live on Thanksgiving here in the United States. So next Thursday, 1 week from today, actually.
And when's the WordCamp?
And WordCamp is December 2nd. So tickets might be a little bit tighter at that point, but I think the live streaming, I don't think they have a cap on it. So
yeah, I don't think so.
At least you'll be able to do that. So speaking of WordCamp US, next year, they just announced 2017-2018 will be held in Nashville.
Cool.
So I would like to attend that.
Right.
We'll see what happens.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Isn't imaging in Nashville normally too?
Yeah, I think it's in Nashville this year. Imaging, the big photo conference.
Yeah, and they have been in the past. It's a good place to have a conference is what I hear.
Yeah. Yep.
It's a good party town, but it's also known for its technology. So
yeah,
it's really a good mix.
And music. It's very well known for music.
Yep.
Yeah. The last two bits of news are kind of related. One is WordPress 4.7 is around the corner. Right now, 4.7 beta 4 is out, which means the first RC version will be out very soon. Basically, it's release candidate. So it's post beta. This is going to be a final release where they fine tune and more people wind up using it and find more bugs. They usually do release candidate 1, 2, and 3 or so, depending on bug finds. And then it gets released. So expect WordPress 4.7 very soon. There's not any major changes except for the next bit of news that I think is super important for photographers to know.
Yeah. So
this will be a good conversation. WordPress 4.7 is removing auto generation of alt text when you use the media library. So currently, if you upload a photo that you did a title or a caption inside of Lightroom and you upload that into WordPress, right now, pre-WordPress 4.7, it will automatically fill in the alt text for SEO purposes.
Right.
For that image based on either the title or description or caption of whatever is included in the metadata that WordPress can see.
Right. And for photographers, this was a good thing because you could rename your images to include the keywords like wedding at Boston and then the name of your photography company. And then those keywords would automatically go up into the alt text to be used positively for SEO without you having to do those extra steps.
Yeah. So there's some positives and negatives to this. The positive is that screen readers, for people who need the computer screen to be read to them, somebody who's blind, for example.
Right. So with a disability.
The screen reader would read all the text on the page and then read the image. And the image, which might have an automated alt text generation, if all it is a keyword,
right, it doesn't tell you what it is.
It doesn't tell you what it is. So
which
as
is
far
what
as
the alt text was built for.
correct.
So the change is good for what the alt text is built for, not so good for the SEO purposes that it's been pulled into using by Google and what we as photographers rely so heavily on.
Correct. So the downside is as a 4.7, it will not automatically fill it in. And if you are not paying attention and just inserting the image, your image would have no alt text. Now,
right.
You know what? This is really interesting to me because you know this. I have a couple of Squarespace sites as well, and we have the same sort of issue going on with Squarespace.
Yes.
Right? And it's interesting how WordPress is going in this direction, though. I mean, I don't know. I'm a little on the fence about this. I like the idea of having to manually add my own keywords into the alt text space, but if it's once and done, I think most people would like it. Would it have been easier and simpler, perhaps, to just tell people how to do or how to use alt text tags rather than to do this kind of sort of going around thing? So
there's a few solutions to this. One is learn about alt text. So learn about the importance of it, right? As somebody, as a website owner, as a photographer who has a website, you need to learn about alt text. It is extremely important. And yes, you want your keyword in there, but you also want it to be accessible.
Right. But and I agree with that. And I think the onus isn't necessarily on us as business owners or photographers as business owners, but why is Google pulling that and using it for SEO when the original purpose is truly for screen readers and for people with disabilities? So I think the system is broken, right? So you want to raise higher for SEO and you want to be, and so we're learning all these tips and tricks. I mean, in the conversation between Squarespace and WordPress, this was a big boon for WordPress in terms of photographers who are, like I said, just, have 1,000 things on their plates. It's one less thing they have to do, where in Squarespace, you did have to manually update it.
Yeah.
And so now you have to manually update it in WordPress. I mean, I really have extremely mixed feelings about it because it's just one less thing that photographers had to do, and now you have to do it.
Well,
right?
I will say that there is a plugin. There's a few plugins out there that are made for image SEO. And I have to come up with think of the name. I think it's just SEO Image Optimizer or something like that. But my guess is that plugin will be updated to bring that feature back to auto-generate.
Okay.
That's my guess, because right now the purpose of that plugin is to crawl your site for missing alts and to fill it in based on the file name or metadata that's there. So my guess is it will do just that.
Yeah,
it will bring it back.
What's the name of that plugin?
I have to double check. I think it's SEO Image Optimizer. I'm going to look. If you guys want to keep talking, I'll see if I can find the name of it.
Yoast has the ability too. I mean, as part of the Yoast diagnosis of any particular post that you have it on, it will search image and alt tag. So I mean, the functionality is there, but it was just, when you're talking to a photographer who's so overwhelmed by this technology, it was just one less thing. Like, okay, keyword it before you upload it, it automatically gets put into alt tags.
Yeah. So SEO friendly images. It's made by Vladimir, who also makes Managed WP, used to, or I guess he still does. GoDaddy just acquired them, which we shared. So it has 200,000 active users. So its job is to automatically add alt and text attributes to all of your images. So
so maybe that's that's where we're pushing people. It's not in core anymore, which. Again, I understand what the alt text is built for, and for a person with disabilities, it really helps them to have an internet viewing experience. So those are all good things, but why is Google pulling from it? Obviously, these are questions we can't answer.
Right.
But, all right, so that's my soapbox. I'll get off.
Yeah, so this is just make sure if you're a photographer, you either, if you're a photographer with a website, which you're listening to this, hopefully you are, or you're building, either install that plugin once you update to WordPress 4.7 or start manually creating your alt tags, because
just be aware of it, right?
Be aware of it, yeah. Or just get into the habit. It's going to import the title most likely. So make it in a habit to just copy and paste from title to alt when you insert an image. It could be as simple as that.
Yeah, and if you have a Squarespace site, I mean, you should be doing the same thing there anyway.
Yep.
The Squarespace site strips the title totally. So you still have a benefit with WordPress in that the title will come up. Squarespace changes it to what, Scott? Like static dot one dot some very strange random
it's a string of numbers.
Yeah,
numbers,
it's not good.
Yeah.
So I mean, at least WordPress still pulls in the title. With Squarespace, you have to touch it. You have to change the alt tag because the title doesn't come in. So I mean, we're still if we're comparing Squarespace to WordPress, I still think WordPress has the advantage of it in this situation for photographers with image names.
Well, there's also the advantage of being able to install one plugin and fix it all.
Right, so, which you can't do with Squarespace.
Right,
you have to manually do it, right, for sure.
I have a quick question for you guys, though. You guys have mentioned Google and alt tag being somewhat important, and it's as if Google looks at alt tags and ranks your site. Am I mistaken? Is that
That's
sort
correct.
of is that an important attribute to look at for a photographer?
Yeah. So SEO wise, one of the components of image SEO is alt text with your keyword in it.
Okay.
So you want it to be a descriptive keyword of the photo, but to also actually have the keyword that you want that image to rank well for.
I get that, but I'm trying to figure out in terms of how a page is ranked, in terms of importance, how important is an alt text? I mean, if there's no alt tag for an image, is that gonna degrade your rank?
You won't rank.
We don't know because Google changes things all the time.
Yeah,
right?
they do change things all the time. But there's a few things that are must-haves, and you won't rank if you don't have these must-haves. What these must-haves, the percentage of importance is unknown.
Right.
So you could have these must-haves, but still not rank. But you're guaranteed to not rank if you don't have these must-haves.
Right. So it makes sense why Google's pulling the alt text, right? Because it is a text-based representation of the image. So to rank in like the Google image searches, they pull very heavily from the alt text because you can't search an image. I mean, I'm sure they'll figure it out someday, but so I get why they do it, but that's not the purpose of why the alt text was created. So this is the fundamental conflict that we're having.
Yeah.
And it affects photographers more than plumbers because your business is photography, right? Your business is those images. So
Totally.
All right, beat a dead horse.
So
well, I think one last point on that is, I mean, you just said it. I think it's even more important for photographers to not rely on just photographs on their blog or the website.
Yep.
Right. People should be writing text. I mean, really stories about their weddings or their portrait sessions or whatever it is.
Yes.
I mean, this is an opportunity to sort of, really remind people.
Yeah, and 300 words is the minimum. I mean, 300 words isn't hard per se. It's only like 2 paragraphs, really, if you think about it. But
I think Scott showed us a slide. It was three paragraphs. So you're not that far off, really.
Yeah.
It depends on how big your paragraph is.
Right. It depends on, if you have a beginning, middle, and an end. I agree with the 3 thing. But if you're just writing for words and not writing a story based, which, I strongly believe in. But cool. I mean, these are the relevant topics that we could dive deep into or skim the surface. I mean, this is how photography businesses are represented online nowadays. Whether you choose WordPress, which obviously we prefer because of the functionality and the customization parts, or Squarespace, which is easier to use, right? For sure. So there's a benefit to both. And then there's 1,000 other options that we don't even talk about because there are so many variables that this conversation to us, it really is WordPress versus Squarespace. So knowing what both of those technologies can do and where your own personal strengths are, coding makes you cry, right? To the point where opening up WordPress is something that you just can't do. Well, okay, in 5.0, you may not need to open it. You may just need to have the front end loader come in, which would be great. Yep. But you still need to know about these alt texts and how you're naming it. You need to know about that even if you're using Squarespace as an easier platform to use. There's still some tweaks and functionality issues that you have to know about as a photographer there too.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So Seshu, let's talk about what's going on with you.
I know, that's where I wanted to get to. What's going on with you?
Well, let's see. On the photography front, I have I've been busy with photographing prep schools here in New England, working with an all-boys school just down the road, actually, and doing a lot of work for them. And then there's families. I love photographing families, and there's so many amazing families to discover right here in my own backyard. I don't have to go very far, really. I have to just get out there and make photographs of the kids and the parents interacting with each other. Love that. And bringing this all back to WordPress. I've been sort of dreaming of a new version of Tiffinbox, a new design actually, and because it was custom design, I'm going to have to probably go that direction again. And I say that with real joy, because I think I do want Tiffinbox to be more than just what it is right now. And one of the few people who I will consult happens to be on the show right now. So, it works out really nicely.
Yeah,
so,
Scott's my go-to too.
Yeah, exactly, right? And the cool thing is also Scott's invited or asked whether I'd be interested in hosting my site with Imagely, and I think it's going to happen too. I mean, So the new year is full of great, amazing things happening.
So what was your decision? You're currently on Squarespace for some of your sites, and you're having the conversation about WordPress. What are the factors for you as a photographer, as a blogger, to consider when you're thinking of those things? Because I think they'll be relevant for anyone listening.
Yeah, I think so. The big draw was, of course, not wanting to mess with plugins and not wanting to just, I wanted to just post photographs, bring people in, have them look at it, and have a neat, clean little form that says, book a session with me or something like that. And it's easier to do. It is easy to do on Squarespace. It doesn't really take a whole lot of time. WordPress is definitely bringing me back to reality in that I want it to be more SEO friendly, and we've already talked about it. Squarespace is not as SEO friendly as WordPress sites are. So I want to make sure that more people find out about my work, see my work, and I'm starting to write more as well. So I love the interface. I mean, even though we've talked about how crazy and ugly perhaps the WordPress interface is, I like it. I mean, I have a great time, in the editing section, and I love I enjoy the writing process. A lot of people will write in Word, write on Microsoft Word and then copy and paste into Word. I've never done that actually. I've just gone right to WordPress.
Yeah, and you don't want to do that because there's formatting things that come over.
Yeah, you probably
don't do that.
Right? Yeah, the formatting issues would drive me crazy, and so it's always that idea that one can do better, and if the technology is moving in that direction, why not embrace it?
Yeah.
Cool. So Tiffinbox. Why don't you share what Tiffinbox is, and then we can dive into the stuff that you paid to have Tiffinbox designed.
Yes.
Actually, I was going to say recently, but it's been like 2 years now or something like that.
Oh, more than that. It's been longer than that. Yeah.
So let's share what Tiffinbox is, and then we'll talk about some of the custom stuff that you outsourced.
Okay, so Tiffinbox, I'll give you the genesis of Tiffinbox. I was finishing up my graduate degree in journalism, and as a photojournalism major, I was having a hard time finding information about photography. And in my head, I was like, well, if I'm saving these links and enjoying these photographs or these galleries online, I'm sure my peers in school would enjoy it too. So I started posting these links. I mean, it was essentially a big warehouse or a directory for photographers' websites.
Wow. And what year was that?
Oh my goodness, this was back in 2003.
Okay, so that makes sense because
right?
Yeah.
Back then it was just whatever it was,
Right.
It was just a way for me to keep track of what was going on, who was doing what in the projects, and I was heavily into documentary photography and photojournalism, and that was my core interest right there, and still is. If you see bits and pieces of the conversations I have with people now, it always sort of comes back to how do you tell stories about people and that kind of thing. So, and it's grown. It's definitely grown from having me write these blog posts to having guest posts and guest bloggers on the site. And that really, I think, grew the website to a great degree because I have no shame in asking people to say, hey, would you like to write a guest post? And if it's a no, it's a no. It's no big deal, you know. But if it's a yes, then, you know, everybody wins because then I can tell, hey, okay, well, Rachel just wrote a guest blog post on Tiffinbox. Go check it out. And people come to check that post out, but they also check out your site. You know, they also check out everything else that you have going on. So that's the thing. That's the beauty, I think, of the blog as far as the way I've structured it is that it's not really about me. It's not about me. I know that for a fact. It is about photographers and everything that's going on in their lives. And for me, I say, you know, I do want to bridge that from commerce to, you know, to creativity. I mean, there has to be that bridge. If you don't have that bridge or you're not on that bridge, you're a hobbyist. That's fine. And that's okay too, you know. But I always like to promote the fact that this is a wonderful profession and it can be a business if you can be just sort of dealt in that way, you know. Right. So I want to promote photographers. I mean, that's the thing. That's my goal, is to promote photographers. Find resources that photographers are going to really use and immediately see a result for their own business, you know. Elevate their business in a way that they've never been able to. So that's what Tiffinbox is all about.
I'm just gonna room's getting darker, so I'm gonna.
Yeah, your light just went out on us. Okay.
Yeah. Daylight.
And you guys asked about customization, and here's a simple thing. Really, is that I you know, the site's built on the Genesis platform. And it's thanks to you, Scott, really, because I think I was going back and forth. I was on TypePad initially.
Wow.
Then moved to, yes, that's how old this is. So it's moved from TypePad to WordPress. And when I was looking for a theme, Scott suggested looking at Studio Press and get the Genesis platform. And I really enjoy it. And I think they've done a great job. And they keep up with things, you know. It's clean code. It's light. It's all the things that you'd want a website to be. It's fast.
Yeah, they're definitely industry standard. I mean, there's other drag and drops that you could argue in terms of depending on your level of comfort, but Genesis Themes is just where everybody keeps coming back to. But so my question to you is, running a resource for photographers and then being a working photographer yourself, do you what are your opinions about seeing both sides of the industry? I mean, there are conversations around, there are educators and people in the space that don't have working business, and then obviously there are working photographers who are just photographers. You know, where do you live in that spectrum, and, you know, what has been your experience doing both?
Well, my opinion is that, you know, it helps. It can only help that you're a working photographer. Then it doesn't mean, and there's no judgment against people who are not full-time photographers. Right. And so, you know, it comes down to, you know, let me give you an example. Let's say there's a strobe that's in the market, and it happens to be something that I'm interested in using myself. There's more of a chance that I'm going to be posting about that strobe or talking about it if I am actually in the market of buying it. Like Fuji system. Right. I'm about to go full on Fuji, you know, basically.
I thought you did. I thought you did go all Fuji.
No, not yet. Yeah, I am. And the fact is, I am researching right now. I'm finding all kinds of amazing resources. I just talked to a guy named Damien Lovegrove, who's an amazing photographer in England just this morning. And he's got a book out, and I'm going to be promoting it because it's all about the Fuji system. And he's guiding people through the process of finding these. So this is the kind of thing that I bring to Tiffinbox, where I say, listen, if I am going through this myself, it makes sense for me to talk about it as well. And it's easy. It's an easier sort of jump, you know. Right. And I think that's what people see in the post as well. Yeah. They don't see it as a straight hit on, hey, go buy this because I'm trying to sell you a flashlight or a camera system or whatever, right? So it's really from like, okay, I'm really interested in this, so maybe you are too. That's it.
Yeah, and I didn't mean it to be as sensitive of an issue as I think it is. I just appreciate that you talk a lot about guest posting, you talk a lot about, but you are also living it. So you're not afraid to, if someone has guest posted for you, to go and guest post for them, and then to, walk the walk. I mean, the fact that you have both WordPress and Squarespace, I think is really relevant, that you can have a conversation about both because you're living it, and you're living in both worlds and understand the limitations and the qualifications of both. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
So I kind of want to dive into the custom part of Tiffinbox a little bit. We've talked a lot about outsourcing on the podcast, even since like the way beginning of like the first few episodes. And I think we've talked to people that do outsourcing. I mean, Rachel does outsourcing, and I think it'd be nice to hear from your point of view as somebody who has hired somebody to design their website, although it's not your actual photography site. Although it's Tiffinbox and not your actual making photos photography site. Talk about the process. Did you reach out to somebody? Did they reach out to you and offer something? And how did that whole process go? Any bumps and things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Well, see, I as soon as you turned me on to StudioPress and you asked me to go, I think it was like, go check it out, man, kind of thing, So I did. And one of the things they have on their site is a list of designers that they recommend or they've worked with in the past that, and being on that website and seeing people's names is a sense of sort of like peace and calm, really, because they're legit. They're not the high schooler who just said, "Hey, I'm going to start up a business," kind of thing. These people have real businesses, and so I reached out to one that seemed to really have it together, I guess, in a way, and I liked her style, perhaps. And I said, "Hey, can we talk about putting this together?" And she was so professional. She was amazing, really. She had sort of a website or a place where all the steps that she was going to be taking was outlined, number one.
Nice.
And then every time she did something, I would get an email saying, "Hey, it's done. Check it out." So then I would know on the beta site that, okay, I can go and see what she's done and then give her comments. I can comment back to her. I can say, "Hey, listen, this is not, the color I really wanted, or the buttons are kind of ugly. I want it to be changed." Whatever it is that I want her to say, I can make those changes, right? So we went back and forth. I don't know, probably for 2 or 3 weeks,
Was there an initial brain dump conversation that happened, or was it all through email?
Yeah, I wanted to give her the idea that I wanted the site to do this, that, the other thing, and really wanted to get her to understand, who my audience was, and what they were looking for, what kinds of things they would appreciate, what kinds of things they probably wouldn't care for. So she was really very patient and professional about all of it. She was like, "Okay, no problem." And then she, came back with a proposal and said, "This is what it's going to cost, and this is these are the changes you can make, and if anything you go beyond that, then there'll be an extra charge." So everything was very transparent. I think having that transparency is very, very, very key, and having a line of communication was fantastic. I mean, I would recommend her, in a heartbeat, because I just loved the way, she just communicated back and forth. I knew that I was getting, exactly what I was expecting. You know. And no surprises, honestly, no speed bumps or whatever it was, unless I decided, "Hey, listen, I want to do this thing," and she'd be like, "Well, in that case, it would be another couple of days before I can get to it."
Right.
And I had to accept that. She was being real, and I was being a little ambitious, perhaps once in a while, and she'd set me straight, and she'd say, "Well, this is going to be another couple $100." I'd be like, "Well, I guess I don't have that." So it would always come back to a conversation, and it was nice that she was keen on seeing it succeed. I think that's another thing too. I think a lot of people would just get into a situation where it's just a money thing, and she actually added my site to her portfolio as a way of saying, "Hey, look, I've worked with a photographer." I mean, that may have been one of the reasons why she worked with me. I don't know, but she had that sort of feeling that, okay, this is going to work for both of us. Let's get this going and get it done.
So. I think that's great that was the communication when you chose her. When you're looking at the page from the genesis, these are the people we recommend. how did you narrow it down to just her? Was it a style aesthetic? Was it going through the websites? I mean, it's sort of like picking a photographer, a designer, a web designer, you know. How did you get to that point?
I think it was really about style and just seeing what she had done before.
Yeah.
And you know, really understanding that this is and you go to her own website, of course, from the the Studio Press website, and you just see, you know, the other projects she's worked on.
Yeah.
You know, testimonials, you know, from her other clients, getting an understanding of, you know, what her process is like.
Yeah.
You know, she didn't have the whole process, I think, laid out, but she said, okay, well, this is what we're going to do first. We're going to do the second. We're going to do third, and then delivery is going to be in a couple of weeks or whatever it was, you know. And I love. I mean, from my perspective, if somebody's going to take the time to explain like what it is that the process is going to look like,
I resonate with that too. I totally agree.
They usually had got it together, you know.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a whole lot of resources to just say, hey, okay, well, thousands of dollars, go for it, you know.
Right.
So I have to be, you know, sort of very smart about it, as most people will be, I'm sure, with their websites, and just say, hey, this is what we want. How can you make that happen? You know.
Right.
Yeah.
I think having a conversation is very, very important. You know, a no obligation conversation for like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, and say, this is what my ideas are. What do you think? Am I crazy?
Right.
You know. And then they'll come back to you and say, well, it's doable. It's just more time, more money, whatever it is. You know?
And how did you get to customization versus just modifying a template? I mean, I know a lot of photographers look at resources like ProPhoto, and they have already templates that need small tweaks but aren't a complete customization like Tiffinbox was. I mean, did you think about that when you were beginning, or did you go right to full customization?
Well, you know, after playing with TypePad for such a long time, I thought it was time to just sort of, you know, make the leap and make it happen where people would take notice of it. I mean, I had plans of having guest bloggers and things like that, and so, you know, if you start inviting influencers to your site, you know, you better look nice, you know.
Right.
I want to talk about your design evolution. So, as you guys were talking, I just dug into the Internet Archive.
So
you want to hear some fun stuff?
Sure.
So for anybody who's listening, if you go to archive.org and put in tiffinbox.org in the search, you can actually look at the complete Internet Archive of Tiffinbox, right? So there's 380 captures of Tiffinbox over the years.
Wow.
And when I say over the years, I'm talking from his the beginning of Tiffinbox. It goes back to 2004. So over 10 years right now of Tiffinbox is there.
Wow. Well, that's a legacy to leave behind.
Yeah. So and that I'm talking like even like the whatever is showing up. This may not even be yours. This might have been somebody who owned it before you. I don't know. Oh no, it is you. So 2004 was, I guess this is TypePad. But anyway, so I went back 4 years or so. In 2011, Seshu is using the thesis theme, and it was blue. The color was blue. It's a lot of blue. And
it was very hard to read. I know that.
It was very hard to read. 2012, same theme, same design, but it was a white background, so the reading it got easier. But the thesis theme that he was using, the design he was using, was very basic. It looked like a blog. It didn't look like a media platform like Tiffinbox looks today. It looked like a blog, right? Yeah. 2013, Seshu switched to the Genesis theme, but had it as is. All I did was customize the accent color, like to use his orange that he uses around Tiffinbox today. 2014 is when he had it custom. So he used the Genesis theme again, but he had one custom built. So that's right there. That's 4 years of evolution, and then of course he's had the very minor changes since 2014. Well,
after investing the time and the money at that point, right? You don't need to. Hopefully you're at a point where you love it and your brand can sustain. And again, this is where being on WordPress, so all the back end stuff is being updated in terms of the functionality, and you don't have to change your theme that you paid all this money for, because hopefully it grows with, and knowing that it's on a Genesis theme, it will grow with it. Yeah. Wow, what a great example. This is really good.
Isn't that cool? So if you look at Tiffinbox today, you'll see how organized it is, how it's more of a platform a media platform than just a blog. It is. There's many different things. There's resources. There's interviews where he does with guests about different products for photographers and whatnot. So
I think the most important thing that sort of was a catalyst for my change from thesis to the StudioPress option, Genesis framework, was because I wanted it to be mobile friendly and responsive, and thesis was not. And I think it was never going to be. I think, I don't know whatever happened to thesis. I have no idea, but it's the thing that really concerned me, is that people were not seeing my posts on mobile devices, and I was like, well, we got to move that direction. So I think
and that's great to be a first adopter of that, because I think there's still photographers that aren't. I mean, 80% of web traffic now, especially brides and families, are on the web, and that's only growing. Last year it was 70, and the year before that it was 50. So it's like an exponential curve, Right.
And I think, as you probably will agree, or it's that Google is looking at mobile sites more than anything else now, anyway, right? So
the component of it, they are looking to make sure that it is there and it is functioning. I mean, it is a component. It's a big component, but it's not the whole thing. Yeah.
Right.
Sweet.
Cool.
Awesome. So that's a great, really great example of the reasoning for doing having just an elegant website, having one that really stands for your business, and sometimes it just requires outsourcing and doing it on a budget, like Seshu did. Set a budget for yourself and talk to people, see if they can work it into your budget, and you'll find somebody that can do it for you, or just get a theme that just looks great, that has customizations in it in itself. So okay, so let's move right into recommended plugins or themes, or both. Now, you're welcome to recommend one you've been talking about, or something else, whatever you want to do. What is your recommended WordPress plugins or themes?
Well, I think the theme we mentioned was the Genesis framework. I think you can't go wrong with that. Scott and I've talked about Divi, and Scott doesn't really care for Divi, but I have used Divi for one of my sites as well, and it's good. It's fine. It works quickly, and yes, it creates short codes and all this stuff. But for my client who's got a pretty much of a static website, it works fine, and he's happy with it. So let me go back. Genesis probably is the one theme I think you'd want to look at. They have come out with some really cool. I think they're third-party templates. That are really nice looking, actually, for photographers, in fact.
Well, Imagely has some. So Imagely specifically has Genesis themes that are built on the Genesis framework specific for photographers. And then there are other resources that do as well, to all industries, not just photography.
Right, yeah.
I will say that for any photographer who likes the Genesis themes, Genesis themes are designed for simplicity. There's very few options in it, very few color and font changes that you can make, if any. They're very basic. So for any photographers who like a Genesis theme, but find the options too limited, the customizations, I should say, too limited, check out the Genesis Design Palette Pro. It works with pretty much every StudioPress designed Genesis theme. So StudioPress is the company who makes the Genesis theme.
Right.
So the Genesis Design Palette Pro is a plugin that adds pretty much endless color and font and whatever customizations for Genesis themes, but they specifically make sure that it works with all the official Genesis themes from StudioPress. It does work with a lot of the third-party ones, but it's not guaranteed. So, but Genesis Design Palette Pro, we'll link to that in the show notes as well. If you are a Genesis user and you want that extra, I would recommend checking that out.
Cool.
So, all right. So anything you want to, add to close with, Seshu, anything you want to share or advice?
Can I mention two more plugins? Initially, I didn't think I was going to mention these, but
sure.
The ones I really want to start using on Tiffinbox or my own other websites are the ones you've actually suggested: Warfare, right?
Social Warfare, yeah.
Social Warfare, and Opt-in Monster.
Opt-in Monster, nice.
You know,
Yeah,
so
those are two great
things-
ones. So Social Warfare is a social sharing plugin, but it goes beyond just the standard social
it's really
sharing.
growing up too. It's made some big changes in the space, and some of the other plugins have sort of fell out of the space.
Yep.
So it is definitely emerging as a leader.
And in fact, Social Warfare is born out of the Genesis community, so it holds the same code quality and speed standards of all of the Genesis themes. So, yes, they work very well together, but Social Warfare will work with any theme that's well coded. But it holds up to the same standards, which I think is an important thing. An opt-in monster is a pop-up lead generation type system that is not just a plugin. It is a software as a service. You have to pay for the service in order to use the plugin. But in my opinion, that is the best of all of them out there. And I've used a lot. But there are many others out there as well, which, if you go back into the history of this podcast, a lot of guests have recommended many of the other lead generation plugins that are out there.
Yeah. Well, an opt-in monster has definitely come up a couple times too. So I think that's a good one to check out for what it does.
Yeah. For some reason, my webcam, I don't know, maybe the sun keeps going away, but it keeps getting dark in my room, even though I keep adding more light.
Well, this is our first winter with the podcast, right? Because we started in December, right?
We started recording in December, but it didn't actually go out. It didn't air until like March.
Right.
I
can't believe we're at 28. I know it doesn't seem like a big number, but for an every other week, like, it's a big number.
Yeah. And, we have 29 scheduled. We're going to have, if anybody's listening, we're going to have Angela Bowman, sorry, I said it wrong, next week, or next episode.
Yep.
She teaches a lot of photographers about WordPress in Boulder, Colorado.
I'm really excited for that because I love women who also do WordPress or use WordPress or utilize it. So I think that having the conversation with both intelligent men like Seshu and women like Angela are important. Mm-hmm. So totally. I'm really grateful that we get to have all of these varied opportunities.
Yeah. So Seshu, anything you want to end with? Any advice for any of the listeners that are thinking about moving from Squarespace to WordPress or thinking about outsourcing a design? Anything you want to share?
I think I'd go back to the idea that hopefully 2017 is a really successful year for all photographers. And in my opinion, and my experience actually, a lot of the success that you want can come through really just doing the work first. And that work can be as simple as writing 300 words or 350 words per week on a regular basis. And as Rachel would say and teach and has taught, do it on a consistent basis on the same day at the same time. Push it out there, start connecting with your clients in a way that is real, that is you, that is authentic. All of that, will come together. I mean, the first few weeks may seem like a struggle. Trust me, writing isn't the first thing I think of. When I look at the WordPress back end, I enjoy the process once I get going, but the first few minutes it's like, what the hell do I talk about?
Yeah, and that's so relevant, and I'm glad you shared that because it's not easy for anyone, even professional writers, even myself. I look at that blank list and I'm like, here we go again, right? But once you're into it and once you're doing, just like photography, 10,000 hours and you're a professional, right?
Yeah.
It's that blinking cursor effect.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing to avoid that, and I've just started to do this, is and this is an idea I have to give credit to Skip Cohen, who said this at a I think it was at Shutterfest a couple of years ago, at a marketing presentation. He said, the easiest thing to do is to go out into the world, into your own community, and interview people and talk to people, and just highlight their life.
Yeah.
And make those connections. And I'm telling you, it's opening doors. Yeah. Honestly, It is the way to go. It's inexpensive, as in $0. Yes, it's going to take a little bit of time, but what are you going to do with that time anyway?
Right.
Sit on Facebook, Really. I mean, I've had the pleasure of meeting so many wonderful people in my community because every week I make it a point to go out and just meet people and say, hey, can I make some portraits of you, and then get a little interview going so we can talk about you. So that series is coming, and it's going to be something that I'll be using on my new website for SeshuPhotography.com.
Awesome.
So
That's awesome.
SeshuPhotography.com is no longer going to be on Squarespace. It's going to be on WordPress very soon.
And
So check it
Imagely,
out.
which is
And
exciting.
Imagely. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I'm excited to help you with that
Thank you, buddy.
conversion.
Appreciate it.
It's gonna be an eventful conversion because converting from Squarespace to WordPress is not easy, as we've discussed in the
Yes.
podcast many times. But
Do it.
It'll be worth it. Yeah, it'll be worth it in the long run. Thank you, Seshu, for joining us today, and thank you, Rachel, for being an awesome co-host.
And thank you, Scott.
Hey, thank you guys. It was fun. It was real fun.
Yeah,
of fun.
totally. So 2 closing notes. One, you can find the show notes from today's episode at imagely.com/podcast/28.
28.
Yes, and episode 30 will be a Q&A, so please, we need one more question for to make 10 for the 10 questions for episode 30. So please submit your question or questions, because we can use it for future episodes.
Right.
At imagely.com/podcast/Q.
Cute.
Okay? So until next time.
Bye.
You've been listening to the WordPress Photography Podcast. To listen to other episodes and to subscribe to the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more, please visit imagely.com/podcast.